Education is a common thread that runs through the tapestry of American social, economic, and political history. Teachers, parents, policymakers, educational researchers, school administrators, curriculum specialists, and the community of students themselves are all involved in examining the purposes of and access to education. From a system of sexist, elitist, and segregated schools, we are moving to those that are struggling to find the most effective and promising programs to best serve the nation's diverse student population. We hope that we're in the process of devising a system of education that will meet the current challenges for equity, inclusion, excellence, and harmony. Traditional teacher-run, teacher-directed classrooms are not meeting today's current educational challenges. This model of education acknowledges the single method of teaching as the transmission of knowledge from expert to novice. Many of the academic difficulties that multicultural and multilingual students have are caused by educational practices that do not meet their needs, such as culturally incompatible pedagogy, lack of responsive teaching, and insufficient weaving of the content to students' previous knowledge and experiences. Many of our students are at risk of educational failure. We need to change the model of classroom teaching. We would like to present to you a model of classroom and teacher change.
Now it's really changed. Now we want universal K-12 education, and at the same time, as we wanted for education, successful education for everyone, then simultaneously that everyone has gotten so much broader. So we've had the tremendous in-migrations into the country of kids that speak other languages coming from other cultures and from other traditions, all in the schools, and we have accepted a moral and social obligation to provide an effective education. It's not working, and I don't believe that it will work. The educational apparatus and the model that we have had in mind can't do it. I think we have to change the model.
We must change the model. But how will that happen? What does a new model for education look like?
What I would like to see for school reform is to begin at the beginning, what I think of as the beginning at any rate, because you've got all these policies coming down of curriculum and finance and management and structure and community relationship and governance. All of this funnels down, in my view of it, it all funnels down into one final common pathway through which everything has its effect, and that's what happens between teacher and children in the classroom. If it doesn't happen there, it's not worth doing. If it doesn't have some kind of effect, because that's the only place that education can have its effect, is in the classroom, in teaching and learning activities. It seems to me that what we should do is begin with a vision of what we want those classrooms to look like, and then devise reform by way of determining how we can best get to that vision. I think there is a remarkable agreement about the essential elements that need to be present in reformed classrooms. For example, in classrooms of the common tradition, they are ranks and files of seats, a teacher in front or walking around the classroom while the students are listening or busy at an individual task at the classroom. And all that implies is what I'm suggesting is not really adequate to the current educational challenge. Well, what would it look like? Mm-hmm. What would that classroom look like? It means that there are several things going on at the same time that are coordinated and meaningful, but it is work that's going on by some individuals, by small groups of students working together, groups of students working with teachers, and so that there are many activities occurring simultaneously in a classroom that is also characterized by a lot of talk, by a lot of dialogue, by questioning and answering and discussing and figuring out together. A classroom that is rich in communication, rich in activity, and rich in energy, is also one that is rich in joy.
Mm-hmm.
People say, well, what you're describing is awfully idealistic, and how are you ever going to be able to do that, and you can't get it done, etc. Well, really not correct, because it will be possible for almost anybody to find a classroom like this. It is effective for everybody. It's a reachable goal. There are existence proofs in every school district in the country. There will be classes like this.
Mm-hmm.
In 1997, researchers at the Center for Research on Education, Diversity, and Excellence at the University of California, Santa Cruz, co-constructed a research study with 2 secondary school teachers that focused on teaching reform. The collaboration began when Laura Yannicone was in her final year of the Master's Credential Program at UCSC and a student teacher in Jack Mallory's high school social studies classroom. Laura approached the professional development trainer at CREDE with a request for assistance in her student teaching placement. She wanted to know how to make instruction more meaningful for all her students. She recognized that the traditional lecture-type teaching did not work for herself or for her students.
I just knew I didn't want to be up there lecturing all the time.
Why not?
I remember when I was in high school, not remembering exactly what my teacher said, because it was nothing for me to touch, to hold on to, or an experience like working with other students. I think that sticks in your memory better than if you're going to just sit there and listen to someone lecture. I can still remember from college days. I can remember the lecture. I don't remember the lecture as much as I remember the person I was sitting next to and what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because it's that same style of teaching where you're just being told something.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thought that this would be very different.
Mm-hmm.
And it was. It was. And I was hoping the students, something different, an experience where they're involved in it, or they're creating something that would make it different than listening to me lecture all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even tell you I don't even remember what I learned in high school.
The research design involved Laura receiving ongoing instruction, coaching, and feedback on how to create a new vision of a high school classroom, one in which students and teachers work together on activities, engage in rich communication, and participate in meaningful activities that relate to their lives and experiences. In this classroom, there are several activities going on simultaneously, and a variety of types: individual work, small group work, mentoring in side-by-side, shoulder-to-shoulder teacher-student work. Laura's master teacher, Jack Mallory, has been teaching for 20 years. Most of his teaching has been at the university level. He has been a bilingual social studies teacher at Santa Cruz High School for the past 4 years. Jack's classes are multicultural and multilingual. Class scheduling at Santa Cruz High School is done in 90-minute blocks. His predominant way of teaching involves lecture and collaborative group work. In the spring of 1997, after watching Laura design and implement learning centers, or workstations, and intensive small group discussions, he asked her to sit with him and explain this process. Shortly thereafter, he developed and implemented his first workstation activities. Mr. Mallory's voice echoes that of a multitude of high school teachers throughout the country. He recognized the difficulty many of his students, especially those from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, were experiencing with his social studies classes. The problem was that he didn't know how to change his teaching. The primary questions that this teacher-researcher team are asking are, what factors would cause a teacher to change their teaching? And how do you change your teaching from a traditional model to a reformed model of instruction?
I was doing my student teaching at Santa Cruz High School, and I noticed that I had a lot of learning levels in my classroom. And during that time, I was using some cooperative learning strategies, and a lot of different types of teaching I'd been learning through the university. But I wasn't finding that I was challenging those students that were at the higher end, and then I saw a lot of ESL students or English language learner students that were in my classroom and then also having difficulty with the reading and the book. And I wanted to find some way to challenge those students that this was, a lot of the information was, but they were a little bored or it was looking kind of easy for them.
You can't lecture the whole time. And the model that we've been pushing here at Santa Cruz High ever since we've begun restructuring 5 years ago or so, we call it, teacher as coach, student as worker, so that you're not the sole source of knowledge in the classroom, but that the student himself or herself is the one who produces the knowledge, who hammers out the knowledge from the raw materials that you give them.
Twice a month, the teachers and professional development trainer and researcher hold meetings at Santa Cruz High School to discuss the process of using multiple simultaneous activities and receive feedback and coaching about the learning centers or workstations. During these meetings, we also examine CREDE's 5 standards for effective teaching and their application to classroom practice. The standards provide a theoretical as well as a practical framework for the vision of an effective classroom where the maximum amount of teaching and learning can occur. When students or students and teachers work together on a common goal or product and have opportunities to talk about the activity, learning is a likely outcome. Here, 2 students work together to analyze the lyrics of 2 Vietnam War songs, choose a similar theme, and write their own song reflecting a similar theme.
So this is my, the title is Duende.
Okay.
The title is Duende, so it goes like, nacer nunca pidió, al pedir nadie le dio, sus huesos son los restos que la tierra se comió, el hambre y el dolor a él le sobran ya. Su ropa es como un duende, vuela, vuela y sin parar. Es como un duende, parece un duende.
Language proficiency is critical in achieving academic success. While studying the Middle Ages, students build a castle and apply newly learned concepts and vocabulary.
Well, what it is, the gate on the outside has to be offset to the gate on the inside, right? Yeah, like what I have.
Yeah, I think that was so that the attackers could not go straight in. They had to go around.
That is correct, Roy. Like this, Roy?
I would
move over.
In the reformed classroom, teachers strive to make the content meaningful by relating it to students' lives and experiences.
Now, do you think a place like this really can exist? Can there really be a place like this?
Yeah.
Yeah? Like where?
Like Albuquerque.
Albuquerque? Or Gallup? Okay. So, do you think there are any other places besides Albuquerque and Gallup that could be like that? San Antonio? Okay. All right. Now, how is Albuquerque like that? Like, who's been to Albuquerque before? Okay.
Teaching complex thinking means involving students in challenging activities. All students need to be encouraged to stretch their thinking, to learn more complex language and content, and to think in ways beyond their current capacities. Student teacher Gina Guardino discusses the complexity of slavery with Jordan.
They gave them their food, their daily needs of food and clothing, but they were still owned, and they still didn't have freedom, literally.
So is that one way that they possibly felt powerless, right? Even though they had, quote, the good life as slaves.
Yeah, that was as good as it got. They didn't have that ability to go beyond that, like pretty much everyone else did, if you tried hard enough.
Can you imagine using like that?
Teaching through dialogue allows students to talk. It encourages them to clarify, elaborate, explain, evaluate, and describe their thoughts and ideas. The standards are not mutually exclusive. They are finely interrelated. Within the instructional conversation, the teacher can assess students' understandings and assist them in developing the language of the content area, relate the material to their own lives and experiences, and strive for more complex and challenging thinking. In this instructional conversation, Jack relates the subject of slavery and powerlessness to students' own lives.
Try and get out of school for a second here in your heads. And again, think about groups that are powerless. You said the aged, elderly people are less powerful. We don't pay much attention to what they say.
I would say it's mostly like they disregard everything they have an opinion in and just like stick them in a home and wait for them to die.
Also, like, I think lower class also has less say because they're lower
like
class.
Any minority.
And, I mean, they have less money because that's, like, a big issue and stuff always.
What determines power in this society is
Money.
money.
Yeah.
Using the 5 standards as the backbone of the research project, teachers discuss how they create and use learning centers in their classrooms.
A situation in the classroom where you have any number, say between 5 and 7 stations that go on simultaneously, where students do a variety of, are exposed to a variety of different things and produce a variety of different products and move from center to center over a period of 5 to 8 days.
We're creating an atmosphere where the students work in small groups or work individually and move around, and maybe work in pairs when they get to a different center, and they get an opportunity to learn something more in depth or get creative about it.
Thematically, if I want to make sure that a particular perspective or event goes in, we did a Holocaust center. When we did World War II, we did a Hiroshima or Pearl Harbor Hiroshima center. So sometimes there are particular topics that I want to make sure get dealt with.
You can make the centers according to a reading center, a writing center, an art center, a music center, or you can make the centers according to a topic. I've done it both ways, and each way works.
Before we even read the text chapter, or before I lecture at all on the material, I'll usually do a, what do you know about the Civil War? What do you know about the Vietnam War? What do you think you know about the Vietnam War? What little bits of jumbled, pieces of information and image and popular myth and whatnot do you have rattling around in your heads? Have them put that usually on a big piece of butcher paper, and then that becomes the sort of ground zero from which we begin. And then the final activity will involve them hauling this back out again from their folder where they've kept all the things they've done during that set of centers, and open it up, look at it, and usually have an opening question, which will be something like, write 2 or 3 paragraphs on, what you used to know about the war in Vietnam, what you know now.
So that's a challenge, deciding, looking at your class, knowing your classroom and saying, okay, can these students handle kind of allow the freedom of allowing them to move around at their own pace and with their own, working with whoever they want, or do they need something a little more structured? So structure would be one thing I would say would be a challenge. The other would be, and this falls into structure, is the discipline to not sit and talk with their friends about something that's not related to the center. That's not a good thing. So that might be where it needs more structure in who they work with and setting up their groups.
I mean, I do tend to lecture. I can go on forever at the drop of a hat. So sometimes, on days we're doing learning centers, I'll find myself, spending the first 20 minutes talking. Other days when we're supposed to be doing group work, I'll suddenly find that I am the focus of attention because I've gone off on some lecture. So I've had to teach myself to reduce, my amount of teacher talk and wait for them to produce. Another thing I'll sometimes do, if I have to lecture, is I'll set my alarm watch for 20 minutes, and I'll promise them that when the alarm goes off, I'll stop lecturing. And then I lecture for another 5 minutes after the alarm goes off anyway. But just to control myself.
Some of the other challenges are definitely creating centers that are fun, exciting, relevant to the topic and relevant to their lives. That's a challenge. It's always difficult, and that's where I always call my friend Audrey in, because she always has good ideas on how to connect it with their lives today. And I think that's difficult because you can easily be thinking about a great activity for them to do, but how does it connect to their lives? How can you make it a little bit more personal, or make it more relevant to their lives? But assessment, sometimes with the product I ask them to give me, I don't feel like it's showing that they've learned something.
Good.
And I think that's important. And I think that, again, like I said, is one of the challenges, is coming up with an activity, not only an activity, but a product that they show you that they've learned it. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard, definitely. I have had an opportunity to speak with the students one-on-one and make better relationships with them and recognize where their strengths and weaknesses are, and learn more about their learning. When I'm doing centers, I enjoy the fact that I can visit and stop and see where every student is. And at every day I'm in centers, I get a chance to see everybody. I make an effort to go around and talk to every single student, which doesn't happen on a day when I need to do a lecture, or on a day that I need to do a whole class, something whole class.
And the most satisfying thing is seeing the degree to which the students are engaged with the material and the intentness with which they work. And then the number of times that I've heard students say something like, this really made me think about what it was like to, be a slave, or be a soldier in the Civil War, or I had no idea that women did so many things in World War II. Things that you don't hear students say when you're done a lecture. Very seldom do you hear, wow, that was a great lecture, that really made me think about things. This really does seem to involve them, and even the students who, if you just lectured for 90 minutes, they'd be asleep in the corner. I think the other thing that's changed has been my relationship with students. At the high school level, the relationship between the teacher and the student is critical.
The other successes would be, I think, for the students. I think that they feel more successful when they can make sense of, or they can learn something about a time in history and connect it to their lives somehow, or understand it as if, these people experience things like we experience things. And I think and that matches one of my goals when I set up centers, is to have them experience what it was like to live in the Middle Ages.
These students' responses to learning centers echoes the 112 student evaluation forms that we received over the course of this past year.
It really gives you a good perspective of what's going on. I think the centers is probably the best way of learning history I've ever seen. It's
Tell me more. Why do you say that?
Because you pick what centers you want to go to. You don't have to go to all of them. I think that's good because you can pick to what you want to learn about most of all, and then you go to them and to actually I like how you learn something about it, and then you have to make something like write an essay or answer some questions. And I like that because then that's making sure that you really know what you're talking about. And otherwise you could just learn that stuff and then just skip onto another center and not know what's going on. So I think when you apply what you've learned, that really helps. I guess I like the variety of the centers, and I like how in each center we've had a women's role to it, and then I'm doing different perspectives right now, and it looks pretty interesting. So I like how in each of the centers there's different views from what was going on. women's, and then like now we have like the other side of Viet Cong, and I guess that's what I like best about how it's not just showing one side of it, it's different.
I like it. It's a good way to get information out of certain subjects. So just reading chapters out of a text, you can get different information out of each center and experience what it was like for whoever living back in those days, and get kind of feel what it was like for that person, or feel what it was like for them to live and go through that, and really gives you a good input and how it works and how it was back then. I like working in groups, and I like the videos and music, and stories are good too. I really like the stories.
Really a lot of fun. Like when the teacher's up there just like telling you, like reading the lectures or whatever, it's so boring. It's like, okay, so I'm always writing or drawing or whatever.
So you kind of tune out?
Yeah, because like at first it's all interesting, but then it keeps on going and going, so I'm like, oh. And I like the centers a lot better. They're more fun, and you get to be with your friends, with people, like in the work, and think about what you're doing. You're paying attention to what you're doing, not to the teacher. I learn more because I pay attention to what people are doing, to what I am doing. And with my other classes, I just do things because I have to do them. I don't get to choose what I want to do.
Well, I like the centers because, like, you just get all different like ways to learn, and there's just like you can like listen to music or like write or read, or like there's a lot like using all the different intelligences to learn, and I don't know, that's just a lot easier to learn, and it's much more exciting to learn too. And like as opposed to probably my least favorite, which would be lectures, because you just like sit there and just get bored by what the teacher's saying. You don't really like end up paying attention a whole lot of the time, and it just kind of goes by you, and you don't really get to think about like the material. And I think the learning centers have helped me a lot, because like it's just showed me, like before we did these learning centers, I didn't even realize the best way for me to learn. I didn't even know that like I could learn well from like reading and from writing, and I didn't really know about all the different types of intelligences. But like now that I kind of can see that and understand it, it makes it easier to learn. All of it makes you like have to think, and yeah, and you always like with all the different centers, you have to think in different ways too. That's what I like about it. I don't know how I'd compare it. It's just more effective because it makes it so everyone's interested and everyone can learn, and the fact that it's self-paced makes it better too, because you're less bound to slack, because you're like, I don't know, just giving the responsibility to you instead of the teacher to teach the material is like, it's better, and then you can always have a teacher for reference.
The majority of students wrote positively about the centers. They highlighted the importance of having choice. Choice in the activities they could do, the topics they could study, the groupings they could work in, and the ability to regulate the time that they spent in a center. A majority of students cited the importance of working with peers, sharing information and ideas, and having the opportunity to learn from dialogue.
What I really liked about the center was we had a chance to work with another person instead of working solo the whole time.
I really liked the discussion that we had. It was the best part of the center.
I liked how in the Autobiography Center, we were allowed to exchange ideas and talk with one another.
I enjoyed the centers because I found out the most about people and me, and I found out things that I never knew about people who I've known for years.
In this research study, the changes in Mr. Mallory reflect a movement from the traditional model of teaching to a reform model of teaching. In the reform model, both the teacher and students are integral to the process of learning. Students are active participants in the learning process and construct meaning through their experiences with their peers and the teacher. These case studies reveal several critical factors in these teachers' process of change and reform. In order to change from a known teaching style, such as the lecture format, Jack and Laura needed to have an alternative methodology, modeled repeatedly over a long period of time. For Laura, this occurred in the Master's Credential program at UCSC, and for Jack, it occurred by watching Laura teach. Jack and Laura needed guidance in initiating the process, support from a professional development trainer and researcher, modeling and demonstration lessons, coaching, and collaboration and the sharing of resources with other teachers at bi-monthly discussion meetings. Over the past year and a half, many teachers and student teachers have observed this model of a reformed classroom. Several have received guidance and coaching from the professional development trainer as well as their colleagues in designing and implementing learning centers in their own classrooms. The meetings grow larger and more divided as teachers strive to build centers that accommodate their content area. CREDE and the family of teachers plan to continue to work with learning centers and this new vision of the high school classroom. Next year, as the teacher-researcher team expands, we intend on linking this pedagogy to student academic achievement. Like all exciting and innovative research projects, we are left with an abundance of new questions. What impact do student teachers have on their master teachers? What impedes a teacher's ability to change? Will students perform better on standardized academic achievement tests if teachers use multiple simultaneous activities and integrate CREDE's 5 standards into their teaching? We are left with questions, threads in the tapestry of American education.